All right, so we are live now. YouTube live. I haven't seen it started. All right, come on, come on. All right, cool. YouTube's live. Instagram is live. All right, peace and love, everyone. My name is Sensei Shui, and today we're talking on the topic of raising your vibration. So, for it, just to let you know before I really get into it, I want to let you know that this isn't going to be super general. All right. Because I see often, like everywhere, it says, oh, raise your vibration. Oh, raise your vibration by do this. Oh, raise your vibration. Okay. But you see it, but what does it mean? I mean, and it's not just like, oh, feel the love. All right. I'm talking in a sense of like science and physics. What is actually going on in reality when you're, say, raising your vibration? All right, because even with that, I've seen this chart go around that it has like, it's red on the bottom and it's violet on the top, and it's like, oh, 100 low vibration of fear, da da da, 1,000 vibration of peace and love, and I'm like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Like that makes no logic, because as a sound healer myself, I don't just hit some bowls and say it's sound healing. I calculate the resonating frequencies of organs, bones, and different chakras. Okay. So if you're saying that, oh, 100 hertz, all right, no, 100 hertz, I believe off the top of my head is like a B flat. All right. Like a B flat two. All right. If you don't know what that means, it's a lower note. Right. All right. So it would be like, wait, B flat. All right, so that would be like, okay, that's a lower vibration. This is a lower vibration than. So what's it saying? Like, oh, you don't want to be a low vibration, but you want to be a higher vibration, but it's the same note. So what's going on? All right. So I want to bring clarity to that question, or to that, because especially with people who are new on the spiritual journey, you see all this stuff. Yeah, hello. Yes, say hello to Ty. Yeah, just don't knock the microphone, okay? You'll be okay. Yeah, you can chill there. All right. But the biggest thing is, when it comes to raising your vibration, it's more about reducing your density. It's not as much as like raising the pitch. If anything, what's being raised, it'd be like if you're in water and something that sinks is lower and deeper in the water than something that's towards the top or floating above the surface, something that's less dense. And I use this parallel because often when it comes to, you look at what was mythology, what was ancient history, what was ancient mystic history talking about before this new age term of raising your vibration even existed. They talk about weighing your heart on the scales of Ma'at. All right. So this goes back to Egypt, before Egypt, into Kemet. All right. So when they're saying weighing your heart on the scales of Ma'at, in their folklore, it's saying, okay, when you die, you weigh your heart on the scales of truth, ma'at. So ma'at is what mathematics comes from. Ma'at is M-A, A-T, of truth, the 42 like rules or laws of ma'at, the 42 laws of truth, okay? But the thing about it is, you weigh your heart on it, and if it's lighter than a feather, if it's equal to or lighter than the feather, then you get to go into the gates. If not, then you have to go into the underworld. And all this about like, oh, you're balancing, and if it's heavier than this was a sign that, okay, hey, you need to change stuff up. Why is your heart so heavy? And to think about, I want you to reflect on when you feel these low vibes, when you feel some heaviness. All right. This is what you could say a low vibration is. It's more about what is a dense vibration, because it's like, what is something that leaves you with a heavy heart? All right. Because this is more when they're speaking about a lower vibration. A lower vibration is more talking about like, if you're in water, it's lower within that aqueous than something that's higher, something that's less dense, thus being light-hearted. So thus things that are less dense. Or if you talk about, oh, you're a light worker, something that's dealing with light. All right. This is something that's not dealing with heaviness. They don't say, oh yeah, you a heavy lifter. They don't use that terminology in the spiritual communities. So I'm going to go ahead and get to some of these questions. And if you're tuning in, please ask questions. Oh, they're not coming right here. All right. I probably should have redone it. But if you're tuning in, please ask some questions. I have one from last week. that says, I'm curious when people see glitches in their surroundings, split in reality. What are your thoughts on this? I really like how you spoke on density of things for seeing less solid. Can you elaborate? All right. So even to go into more like what I was talking about last week, when things say are like less solid, less dense, this is what I'm talking about when you have your different entities you might interact with, or when you're talking about auras, or when you're doing Qigong, or if you're doing Reiki. What you're talking about are less dense forms of phenomena that are actually making a difference of reality. So, like when you're doing Reiki healing and you're feeling it, or crystals and the vibes, or even sound, it's not something that like is a solid form of matter, but it's still interacting with it. It's something that is less dense. If you look into some of the Tibetan and Buddhist masters, what do they do? There's some of the masters literally have the ability to pass in the forms of light. All right. And so when you see these glitches in your surroundings, what are these glitches? And so when I'm talking about glitches, I'm saying like when you swear that you put your keys somewhere and they're there and you put them there every single day, and you like might just be finishing a meditation or something, and then they're in a completely different spot and there's no one else, and you swear that something else moved it. Or like you swear that you put a spatula here, and then you turn around, it's in a completely different place. Or just how something seemed to take longer, or when you're talking and your Wi-Fi drops off. These glitches in reality, like what is the point of all this stuff? I want to kind of bring these ancient teachings into present day, into the future, when they're talking about Maya. All right. So when they're talking about Maya in the Hindu Sanskrit text, that's a word that also means the illusion. All right. It's also something that in modern terms they use as the matrix. All right. And so to talk about the matrix more, it's not just these things that are in line of like, oh, you have to feel like, oh, you graduate and then you get a job and then you get married and you have kids and then you get a house and then you get a mortgage. No, that's not the matrix, right? The matrix is the fabric of what you see and everything around you. It's the matrix is a word for something that is a part of creation that's within another aspect of creation. So you could even say, if you're making like a little mixture in a glass, in that glass is the matrix for that, that concoction, that beverage, that smoothie that you're creating. It's everything within it. It's not the glass itself. It's everything within it that's encompassing it. So likewise, in this reality, everything that encompasses around with the matrix, when you start to realize, okay, everything isn't like, this isn't everything, right? There's other stuff going on. Once you start to realize that, believe it or not, there's this like counteraction part of the program. If you've ever seen the movie, it's like tech support. It has Tom Cruise in it. It's from like 2002. It will come to me. But anyway, in there, once he starts to become aware that, hey, yo, all these people, or you could say even like the Truman Show, right? And that's a great one. Like in the Truman Show, once he starts to become aware that, yo, there's things are recording me, everything starts to act up and they start to distract them and they want to put them in other stuff. That's talking about a higher truth to reality. Once you start to figure out that, hey, yo, like everything isn't as physical as it seems, it's like, oh, wait, let's distract them. All right, we're going to make them seem like, oh, no. Because how oftentimes that your keys end up somewhere different, or you swear that you saw something before in a deja vu, or you had a dream about something and it actually came true, and then your mind just shrugs it off like, no, like that's just normal, like it's whatever, like that. I'm just tripping. I'm just sleepy. No, you're actually becoming aware of a higher truth of reality. So write it down, reflect on these things, reflect on the feeling in your heart, right? You see there's an eye on my chest today. Today you want to see through the eyes of the heart. You want to go with the feeling. Don't let your mind get in the way of everything. Because when you start to see these splits of reality, you're starting to truly, I won't say raise your vibration, you're becoming less dense in your vibration. You're raising yourself in this, so you could say this harmonic vibration. So you're raising it in collection of others, right? That's more of so what's going on. Once you start to do this, you'll be able to see like less dense forms of phenomena, like seeing auras. All right. So when you're seeing auras, when you're seeing an aura, all an aura is you could say it's more of the ultraviolet frequency coming off of something. Everything has an aura, even like a table, a chair, your phone, myself, a dog, a chair, a fork has an aura, because all that is, honestly, like what a aura really is when you get into a point of like matrix simulated reality, it's a tell that, hey, yo, like something's being generated within this, but if you get into a science perspective of it, it's just like the feedback from like the electricity within a vehicle, you know? So if you're gonna like look at my hand or something, and then you just look, you know, a few inches, not even a few inches, like a centimeter or a little bit above it, you're gonna see this really faint glow, a really faint glow above my hand. All right, just very, very faint. That's not just the light, that's my aura, right? It's just a very faint glow that you start to see. And the thing is, you train your eyes to see. And what you do when you look, you're not like looking at like, oh, I'm trying to see it. Almost like you're using your peripheral vision in a way, because the corner of your eyes, see at a higher vibration, like truly at a higher frequency, rather. Let me say that. They see at a higher frequency than straight on. Like straight up, if you're seeing out of a corner from like a lens, the corners of the lens have like a shorter wavelength where the light goes in. That's why when you see things that you thought you saw something in a corner that's going behind you, it's like, yo, I swear I saw something moving, but there's nothing moving. That's when you're seeing, when I say less dense forms of life that are moving by you, whether it be like, because what's really interesting, they like dump everything in a thing like, oh yeah, it's a ghost. Don't you think if we're truly in a multi-world, multi-dimensional reality, there's more things than a ghost? Like you could say like fish, you know, there ain't just two types of fish out there. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on. What's to say that this isn't like a parallel reality and there's like something that's an alien, right? Or something that you're seeing and that you're finishing like a meditation or something, you're listening to some good music and you're seeing something at the corner of your eye, and this is a higher vibration of something that you're seeing, and you got like a little peek. Just like how you saw it, they probably just like, yo, what was that? It's whatever. You know, it's something that seemed to not really have like, oh, okay, that really wasn't anything, because that's what it wants you to think again. It doesn't want you to reflect on these things, to become aware that, yo, I'm not alone in this. We're not the only beings conscious in this plane of reality, even that there's planes of reality to begin with. All right. So for this, like, please ask questions because I'm just kind of going off. But something else I remember a question someone asked was about like, what does raising your vibration like really mean? When it comes to that, it's letting go of these more dense emotions and these more dense feelings. A lot of times they talk about materialism, all right, because that's a great one. And I want to extend this idea of materialism to not just mean clothes. All right, because I even see this type of social materialism or even destination materialism when you see these nomads going around, especially on Instagram and stuff. That's when you identify the material as your, not just, I'm not even going to say as a source of happiness, but actually of something of like true value. Like, okay, the more like cars and houses I get, that actually equates to me and becoming less dense in my vibration. So it's something that's actually really important. So I need to, you know, neglect myself and do all this stuff in order so I can get all this stuff. But then once you have all this stuff, realize it's all this empty space. And then what's really a higher purpose to it? You know, it's detaching from these more dense, heavier things, especially when you get into fear, when you get into anger, when you get into doubt, when you get into self-pity. And it's not like, oh, I never feel these things, but it's more like you're letting something pass through you. Just like if you throw a rock in the water, the water doesn't just like, hold it up, right? It just kind of floats to the bottom and it goes out and lets it do its thing. You know, if you throw a rock through a cloud, it just goes through the cloud, right? It goes through the cloud and the cloud goes back in and encompasses itself. It doesn't dwell on like, hey, yo, like, why did a rock come through me? I can't believe someone threw a rock in the sky. They actually did it. I can't believe they threw this rock in the water. No, the water just fills that spot back up. The rock goes in its new place, only to be eroded through time. You know, likewise, when it comes to these heavier sets of emotions, and especially like pettiness, right? I will even say pettiness is a way of like, I call it social materialism. When we focus so much on like, oh, this person did this, and this, so I'm going to make them think, oh, I'm going to show them that. Why does it even really matter? It's your own path that you're on. If you're trying to do something in order for someone else to react, what are your intentions behind it? What does that really say? That you really, you know, if we're trying to live in the present, that's being too stuck in the past, right? Letting the past influence your future, right? By bringing it with you in the present, which there's really no need to do that. Why? Because when these things go behind us, to leave it behind us and learn from it, Realize that if someone did something wrong to you, they did something wrong because they probably do the same stuff to themselves. Or if they're just human, they just messed up and they don't even know it, right? Like for real, like we do that all the time. If we just mess up and we learn, we become honest with it, and we learn eventually. Some people faster than others, but there's not always that need or that thing to be like, oh, I'm going to get the one to tell them, because guess what? They're just going to kind of hear you like noise and then keep going until they see it how they do it to themselves. Because if someone did something mean or out of line or nasty to you, they definitely do the same thing to themselves. This kind of comes to like Gary Vee. He talks about this often. He's like, yeah, think about it. If someone goes onto your page and they comment these nasty things, they're taking time out of their day to go there, think the stuff up and put it out. If they're going to do that and spend energy on that, what is that saying about themselves? If they're going to take this time and put this negative energy towards you, they would do that because they do that towards themselves. Those likely to like let go of these more dense, right? These heavier things in reality, in our experience. All right. And so it might be a little bit shorter today. Flower Pointy or Easy, whoever is listening, please ask a question because I might close it pretty soon. I thought it was going to be a little shorter today, but I just really wanted to get straight to the point with it because I see all this stuff about raising your vibration, and people are like, especially I'm very active on TikTok, and on TikTok there's a lot of younger people on this, like people in their teens that are starting to kind of like wake up and become more aware, and I see them falling victim to spiritual materialism. So when I talk about spiritual materialism is putting all your power in a wand or a crystal and some tarot cards or in some sage, not realizing that that power is within yourself, right? That power is within you. This is a tool to get something done, but you could do with that. It's just like, okay, if you want to screw in a screw, you could use your hands or you could use a screwdriver, but it wasn't the screwdriver that did the work. You were the one that was that power behind it that had it getting done. But at the same time, it's not necessary. If you really, some things do help with it, but it's not everything allotted to that. And just like with this, I just want to bring clarity that's about becoming less dense. As science and spirituality start to combine, we will start to see how, there's a methodology to all this stuff. All it means is if you look at the Vedas or the Vedic sciences, all those texts, that's just a science, right? A science just means a methodology of achieving something, especially when it comes to spiritual states, meditation, lightening your heart, astral projection, like telepathy, things like that. As we start to get closer to the singularity and we map out these things, it's very important for us to start to learn these roadmaps and then to share it with others and not just be like, oh, raise your vibration. Oh, high vibes. All right. What does this actually mean? Right. I say this over and over because I like to resonate. I like to repeat myself so I can be like, yeah, what actually does it mean? So are you saying that something that's like a high pitch is a higher vibration and something that's a low pitch, like my voice, is a lower vibration? Well, when you talk about hertz, yeah. But I'm like I talked about earlier, I don't think if anyone was on for this, but I referred to the Egyptian of Kemet. All right. So in their mythology, they talk about when someone dies, they weigh their heart on the scales of Ma'at. All right. Ma'at is the goddess. Okay. The goddess of truth. All right. When they wear these scales on the heart of Ma'at. All right. I have this in my room, by the way, right there. When they weigh their heart on the scales of Ma'at, right? That's why there's a feather overhead. That's Ma'at right there. All right. So when they weigh their heart on the scales of Ma'at, it has to be lighter than a feather in order for them to ascend. If it is heavier than that feather, again, speaking of weight, it's more dense and they have to come back, you could say, into the underworld or try again. All right. Until they become lighthearted, right? They're, I would say, becoming less dense, more lighthearted, more easygoing, not just carrying all these things of the past with them. That's when they're able to ascend because they don't have this really heavy vibration of like physicality of like, oh, they did this and they're the COVID, not weighing them down. It's just like, hey, yeah, this is a time where we're in our homes. We have the time to heal. We have the time to self-reflect. We have the time to journal. We have the time to connect with people, and we have time to connect with ourselves, right? Of anything. I like to say that this is a time for healing. During all this time, it's a time to bring awareness to yourself. Yes, there is a negative to a lot of this, but also a negative just means it's the other side of a positive. So with that negative energy, use that to transmute it. Use that, what the negative brought up, to accept that. Be like, yo, like if you're going to think a light's going to turn on and not cast a shadow, gotta kind of be honest with some more things. Especially when it comes to this raising your vibration thing. I see a lot in this new age spiritual community how it's almost a denial of some of these heavier things in life. I see some things called shadow work. Even with shadow work, it's kind of passed off like, oh yeah, do your shadow work. Da, da. Oh, these vibes are attacking me. Da, da. And it's like, wait, let's learn how to use our vibration to offend ourselves psychically. All right. When they say rise above, become less dense, be like that air balloon. You just be like, dude, you're rising above the situation because it can't even hold on to you, because it'd be like trying to get a brick to hold on to the air. It can't, because it's not dense enough, right? It can hold on to some sand because that's so dense, but it can't hold on to those things less dense, and not let those heavier things hold on to you in your life. That's what all this is about, right? That's what about raising your vibration is about. It's about becoming less dense. It's about, when you're doing this shadow work, for lack of a better term, actually addressing these uncomfortable parts with you, going with it head on, accepting it, and then building this mechanism within yourself to be able to, you could say, things can't attach to you. All right. When these heavier things or some of these cycles come back, it's not like, oh, I'm better than this. It's like you don't have this desire. It's just like for food, right? I'm a big advocate of plant-based eating. When I say plant-based, why I say plant-based and not vegan is because plant-based, plants should be the base of what you eat. I don't care where you're at, everyone needs to eat more plants, because this heavy diet within grains and animal proteins is why you got a lot of people that are sick and hypertensive and stressed and stuff, because a lot of people are nutrient deficient because they're not eating plants like at all, or like a minimal amount, and we need to eat more plants. That's why I say a plant-based, right? And now that I've moved towards a plant-based diet, again, I did that because there was one day about 4 or 5 years ago where I was literally throwing up blood. Yes, I was throwing up red and dark black. All right, red and dark black blood, just like literally everywhere. After I was swimming, I used to be a Division I athlete. And then basically, long story short, I go to the hospital. They rushed me to the ER. I had tumors in my throat. I had tumors in my throat because I was not managing my stress well. I was not eating the right things, and I was denying what was going on. And because of all this, my body started to react to it. And then I remember on recovery, they were like, hey, so you can't eat while your throat heals up, because I had tumors in my throat. They had to cut them out. So all the stitches and everything were healing. They're like, all right, so you can't eat meat. You can't eat spicy food. You got to eat more veggies and lay off the grains. And I was like, yo, I got to swim 5 or 6 miles tomorrow. What am I supposed to do? But gratefully, at my alma mater, University of Denver, they had a plant-based section. So I ate that. Turned out I felt better. I felt lighter. I wasn't throwing up all the time. And in that, when I say my vibration became less dense in a way. And so when it came to some of these heavier things, I no longer desired it. And it wasn't like, oh, the smell, oh, I had to get myself off the temptation. It was like, nah. The reason I stopped eating fried chicken was because the last time I ate it, I broke out in a rash, like straight up. I had a rash right where I don't get them normally too, like because I used to have eczema. Right, I got it right here, and then my arm started breaking out in a rash right at, like, I'm saying, like 15, 20 minutes after I ate some Frenchie's fried chicken. I'm like not even joking. And that was a strong enough why to be like, I'm not going to eat this. I'm not going to eat this stuff anymore because my body doesn't like it. It's not because, oh, X amount of animals and da da da, and you want to save the planet. No, I did this because my body didn't like it, and I was listening to my body. Likewise, when you find yourself becoming less dense in your vibration, raising your harmonic, moving towards a lightheartedness, you'll find yourself, when people start to gossip or talk negatively about others, you're going to find yourself like not want to be there. It's not like oh, I need to do better. It's like yeah, I'm really not about this. And then I'm going to like go away. So could you go explain different ways to shed your ego? All right. So when it comes to ego, all right. So I talked about this maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago, but what's really interesting is with ego, with this word, right? Ego is a relatively new word, right? So ego was invented in about the 1700s, and it's something that described like the awareness of self, right? And so I like to go earlier than that and go into Egypt and Kemet because I just have a connection to that. I have a connection to Kemet and connection to like India, Indus Valley, like really, really heavy, right? Past life stuff. But within, if you've heard of the Merkabah, right? So the Merkabah is basically the human light body. It's three different words. Mer, it's like waves in a box. So it's like the light body. The Ka, it's like two arms. So it's like the vessel, and Ba as a bird. All right. And so when it comes for Ba, I liken that to the ego because they say the Ka cometh not until the Ba's incarnate. Right? The Ba cometh not until the Ka's incarnate, right? So not until the spirit is within this vessel does the Ba come. All right. So not until the spirit was in the vessel does the awareness that, oh yeah, my name is Shui. That's what I am. That sense of self, that I would like to say within spirituality is the mechanism that you use because I see a lot of this like, oh, shed your ego, da da da, by from like other spiritual teachers and stuff. But in a way, I like to clarify this because it's like, what's really pushing you to want to improve yourself? What's pushing you to want to read? What's pushing you to want to meditate more? What's pushing you to want to do this? It's the ego itself. I would say more so it's not like getting rid of the ego. It's more so not like being able to recognize what the ego is for what it is and realizing that's a mechanism in this reality that you've been given to not only help others, but help yourself. To realize that you are not the ego, you are not the name that you've been given, you are this higher entity, you're this higher consciousness, this higher intelligence that's mechanizing all this. But it's not like, oh, shed the ego's bad, I get rid of it. No, it's more like, yeah, I realize this isn't me. Like, it's not about me at all. What it is, what Sensei Shui is the mechanism that my higher self uses to teach others. Sensei Shui is a platform and a brand used to plant seeds of consciousness around the world. It's not about Sensei Shui, but if I was just this spinning ball of energy, how much good could I do? I realize in this reality, you have to have some type of form or some type of ego to get you to do something, right? To get people to recognize it. Because remember, a point of all this stuff is to teach others. Yeah, it's great to like work on your else, but once you learn things, you must teach and pollinate others. My spiritual master told me, he's like, yo, you need to teach. Like, what's the good if you have all this knowledge and you sharing it for yourself? It's like if you cooking some food and it's like, oh man, that smells so good. And you're just like, yep, I know it does. Oh man, I'm getting full. Oh, and you never like, you know what? Like, hey, let's eat together. All right. That's to say the role of the ego to share this food, share this knowledge that you get with others, teach, even if it makes you uncomfortable. It's okay. Like you'll get better at it from teaching. Find the platform. If it's texting, if it's reading, if it's like writing something, just teach and spread the knowledge, pollinate. It feels really good. And from that, you learn a lot because even sometimes when I'm teaching and you see my voice I start talking really fast, you could say that's just a bunch of knowledge coming in. And I'm like watching my ego, I'm watching Shui talk. And even sometimes when I'm talking, it's like I'm talking to myself, right? I'm talking to my own ego because it's like, yo, you need to do the self stuff too, right? It's not just like I'm telling, like how oftentimes I go back and I listen to these audios and my old posts and stuff. And it's just that right time when I hear it. And I'm just like, damn it, I'm right. No, I'm calling myself out right now. Yep. Okay. Yep. I'll do that. Yep. Yeah, you're right. I need to stop, reflect on the past. Yep. You're right. So that's why kind of the way about where it's not like shedding your ego, but it's more shedding your attachment to the ego. Shedding your attachment to your ego that, oh yeah, the ego is me. The ego, it's all about me. Because I would even say you equate ego to the physical body. So ego would be like the body, thinking that, everything within like the Buddhism, Hinduism is being like, hey, you're not the body. You're not this. Even Christianity, they say you're in this world, but not of this world, right? You're not this. This is the ego thinking it's all about this, not realizing, oh, there's electricity and interact in this reality. That's what this is. This isn't you. This is the tool you use to interact and to get senses. I encourage you to, it's called soul. by Pixar. Watch the little short, and it kind of talks about like, I don't want to give it away. It's a like a little what do they call it? Not a premiere, but a trailer. Yeah, in the trailer, it's like this guy dies a little early, and then he's trying to eat pizza, and then the pizza goes through him, and he's like, "Why can't I taste it?" It's like, yeah, that's where you go to Earth School, man. So you can like taste stuff and sense and touch and smell and all the stuff that you can't do when you're like this spirit body, like that's the point, right? You're coming here to experience sensation. It's not like when you're in an energy form that you don't, but it works differently. So even to kind of take that into less dense forms of realities, when you have like different entities or spirits or other things interact with you, how like this is something to think about. All right, when you hear of these hauntings and other stuff, how is it that they're hearing a voice from something that doesn't have a voice box or a larynx or lungs or a mouth or anything? Like really, like think about like how does that work? Or how is something opening a door when it doesn't have arms, right? Or like any type of appendages to do that stuff, right? Like how does this work, right? It just works differently. A lot of times when it comes to voices, um, HBI talks about a lot more, but when it comes to voices that you may be hearing in places, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, definitely check that out. And so when it comes to like places and you say if you hear voices, especially if you get a lot of like phenomenon like the East Coast, some places where it rains a lot, especially in London and things like that. You need to realize that the materials these buildings were made of like slate and made of like different types of granite and wood, things that like literally they make like records and vinyl out of. So when you're talking about people are like screaming and have a great time at the right time in a storm or something, it's literally like an audio recording. And you could be like, they could be like, "Oh, happy birthday to you." Slow that down. And you walk and you just like it's storming, you hear that, you're like, "Yo, what's going on? This place is haunted." Now it's a voice recording that's recorded into the walls, into like imbued frequency into the walls, right? But if you're like me and the last place I lived, there was an entity that was interacting with me. But with that, there was like something traumatic that happened in that home, right? I believe this person, she was like raped and killed, like not even joking, like in the house. And there was a spirit, her name was Sierra. I'm not joking. I found this random key with the name Sierra. And I had these dreams with her and these crazy interactions about trying to get her out this loop. Because what's interesting from this trauma, a lot of these say entities or something that's like that, where you could say a ghost is just more like a human that didn't accept that it died, right? It didn't accept that it wasn't this. At the time of death, that something traumatic was like, no, 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 still going on. So it's replaying and reliving that moment in its head over and over and over and over and over and over again. Time is a lot different when you don't have this physical form, right? Time is very, very different. And so think that people keep coming into your house and you're like, "Yo, hey, help me, help me." But and then instead you're like knocking stuff over and everything because you can't like talk, right? How are you talking? Like you hear these weird sounds like, are they talking to me? Or, doors are opening for no reason. And we're like, I'd be talking and chilling and be like 2 a.m. and I feel these chills through my spine and I get these messages in my head, these things of fear, and I start crying. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on, man? Until I started like becoming more aware of some of these things is like, oh, this is something like a soul that's like trapped like in this traumatic experience and like reliving it like over and over, because it would only be in certain areas of the house that have this phenomena, and it'd be at like specific times, especially when it'd be like close to full moons and it was a little stormy outside. It wasn't like every single time, it was like specific times. And once I started to really work on seeing auras, right, that's another part of seeing auras that it's not discussed a lot, right? Once you start to see auras, all right, you're training your eye to see less dense forms of reality. That's when I started to get the ability to see entities and see other things like that. And just to be real with you, no, they didn't have two hands and two arms. No, they look like this big orb of like independent stuff that's moving around like super fast. Like that's what they look like. It's like I feel it, and then I always get this. It's something that I don't know why, but the way my body responds to this is like my third eye gets really crazy, my eyes get a little teary, and then I see this huge like ball like moving around, like anywhere from like 3 to 6 feet or 1 to 2 meters long, moving around. And I'm like, okay, until it would pass through me, knowing that okay, when this entity or this ghost is passing through me, that's his way of communicating with me. And I had to use my heart to interpret what they were trying to tell me. All right. What this less dense form of life was trying to communicate to me. I had to start to learn how to interact with my feelings and learn what they were trying to tell me, what they were needing help with. All right. And so with that, that's about becoming less dense. All right. When it comes to raising your vibration, it's about becoming less dense. It's not just, oh, raise your vibration. Oh, it's not. It's letting go of these heavier things, all right, in your life. The things that weigh you down. Oftentimes, it might be the past, some old memories, or even some attachment. So even when it comes to physical stuff, some of the yogis and other people say it's like, no, you don't own your clothes. Your clothes own you. And it's just like, huh, how does that work? Because it's like when you think about like someone be like, say for something this, because I'm not gonna act like stuff doesn't own me. I know that. Like, say my guitars, like some of my guitars, some of my plants, I love them, right? It wouldn't be like, oh, well, like it hurts my heart. It's like, I don't want to leave it. It's like, okay, does this like this material thing like really own you? You know, in the way where it's like, oh yeah, it's not like, oh yeah, walk around naked. No, I'm not saying that. No, I mean more like, okay, is your emotional attachment so much that it's keeping you from doing something else? That okay, this item that like serves you no good, or it's like it just brings up these old memories. Is like I don't. Someone gave me that 10 years ago, and no, they were so cool, but that's kind of holding you because oftentimes I like to say, how can you accept the blessings of the present when your hands are full? Sometimes we really need to let go of these things that no longer serve us, these heavier things, in order to allow something new to move in. Or even some of these heavier friendships, or especially I was talking about ghosts and entities earlier when it comes to death, like a lot of that stuff is to be able to let people go, know that you always have access to them, but really to let them go, because how would it feel that you're trying to go off on a journey and you're always holding someone's hand and you're not letting go tight as they're moved into this new transition of life and experience, but you're just holding them and holding them and holding them and you're not letting them go. And it's like, yo, like we said our goodbyes. I visited you in my dreams, in your dreams, and we've spoken. Right. And now it's time for you to let me go so I could go about my path and you can continue yours, you know? Because that's been my experience. There's been a few times where I've had relatives die or really close friends, and then it'd been like anywhere from weeks to years later that they visited me in dreams. Like I got a whole dream journal and like literally wrote it down that they're like, hey, can you, one person I had to release from the darkness that happened 3 years ago. That was intense, like super intense. Another story for another day. And someone else was one of my really good friends. His mother passed away and she visited me and she told me basically, it wasn't now that like, let my son grieve for you, we've done all we could do, but thank you for visiting me, like, and just seeing me for that last time. She passed of cancer, but she was like, thank you for seeing me in this last time. And you've done your job. Just watch out for my little boy. Make sure that he grieves, but don't let him get stuck in this for too long. And then she just went away. And she was just like, I'm happy, and she just went away. And then it was like, okay, I got this solace, and this was 2 days after her funeral, and I was like, okay, she was really going by and like saying her goodbye. She was really visiting and letting people know, okay, it's time to let go. It's not time to hold on to keep these people from moving forward. Because when it comes to these less dense forms, all right, in ourselves, if you want to say what the spirit or the higher self is, and just like a little pinch, I see some things where they say, oh, my higher self, and then it's like a more ideal version of themselves. And that's when, kind of on your point, right, the ego, when I was saying shedding attachment to the ego, when you see that your higher self, if you're trying to have your higher self have like hands and arms and like legs and stuff like that, why are you attaching a physical form to your higher self when your higher self is something not restricting by the bounds of physicality, right? It's something much greater than that. So we're going to be closing out soon. It's been about 40 minutes. Thank you for joining, Susie. You're a little bit late, but I believe will be going on IGTV later because Instagram has that really cool feature now. It's also on YouTube, on SoundCloud. This is episode 6. I haven't been sending it out to everyone, but today we were speaking on raising your vibration and speaking more about how it's like decreasing your density. So again, that I'm going to start saying that decrease your density, Peace and love. Have a nice day. And namaste. Peace, brother. It's going to be on IGTV. It's going to be on IGTV. Ow.